Welcome everyone to Talking South this last day of January, and especially welcome to Wolfgang Werminghausen from Germany. Hello? You don't have audio. Can you do something with your audio?
No?
Aha.
Now do you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Fantastic.
Okay. Is it good?
Yes.
The volume and so on?
It's perfect, yeah.
Okay, fine.
So can you tell us where you are in Germany?
I'm in Münster, Germany. It's quite in the middle or more than northwest of Germany, near Netherlands.
Yep.
And today we have in winter snow.
Fantastic.
I'm not used to have seasons anymore.
No. I'm back in beautiful Greenland. I traveled, I think, 10 hours by plane 2 days ago. So I have a terrible jet lag because I went back 4 hours in time zones, and I think I went down like 30 degrees temperature from the Canary Islands to Greenland. So
where have you been?
Canary Islands, Gran Canaria. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've never been there, but
I've only been there once before, but that was when I was a kid, so you know. Okay, so we are on Talking South, and this is going to be uploaded later today. And I think I invited you to talk a bit about tipping points in the climate system. And because I get a little bit confused, because some people like Paul Beckwith and lots of other scientists, they go on and on about this tipping point and then this tipping point and then this tipping point. So I was kind of wondering if you had any perspectives on this, because the way I see it, if you know, one of the examples of tipping points in the encyclopedia and stuff, it's like if you have a glass, let's say a glass of wine with a flat bottom, and if you tip it over, you come to a balance point, and if you go further than that balance point, the glass is going to fall down and it will smash to pieces, right? So it seems to me that some of the people who use the word tipping point in the climate discussion, they think that every movement, even further than the 1 point, every movement is sort of a new tipping point, because and then the small glass pieces are jumping up and down on the floor, and that's a tipping point. So I was kind of wondering, is there one super tipping point in the, let's say, in the Arctic ice system, or is it correct to talk about all the different seas and areas and inland ice as separate tipping points?
It's a big question. I think of tipping points in a variety of more than one tipping point. I once used the metaphor from a not boiled egg lying on the edge of the table.
Yeah.
And you only have to give him a very little kick, and the egg is crashed.
Yeah.
And for me, tipping points have to do with, I think, exponential growth. And I often think about exponential growth, and I guess a very good step to understand exponential growth has been. I first studied psychology, so I have nothing to do with climate change and things like that. And then I studied for 2 or 3 semesters computer science, combined with economy. And in this computer science class, we had to program little software pieces. And just in the beginning, we programmed such functions. What is the right recursive function?
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yes, I do.
That are functions that call themselves. For example, you have a function add 1, and then you call add 1 from in brackets add 1 and so on.
Yeah.
And the most important thing beside the programming of this algorithm has been to program an exit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't come out of this little program.
Yeah.
And then the computer crashes and Stack Overflow and so on, because it's growing and growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, you can even start to see smoke coming up from the computer if it's not old computer.
Yes, and so I think tipping points are maybe a development that has no exit point, or the exit point has been in the past and or right in the moment now, and there you can stop it or influence what's going on, but it's otherwise it's developing very fast, and I think exponential functions or developments like growth of money or depth, for example, it's always underestimated.
Yeah.
And it's all the same. For example, money growth in the society, in the Western societies, like since the Second World War, in the 60s or 70s, we didn't have very much money. The governments didn't have very much money, and the debts were quite low. Nobody thought about paying for interest rates. Some corporations maybe they built a new company, and they lent money from the bank, and they had to think about interest rates nobody else had. And it's going faster and faster. Same with interest rates. Interest rates of interest rates of interest rates. Yeah. It's an exponential function.
Absolutely.
And it's always underestimated, and since now always the exit has been a crash or collapse or wars to bring in more money.
Yeah, create new money from chaos.
Example of money system, yes.
Yeah, it's like your website, faster than expected. .1, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the reason that everything is going faster than expected is that a lot of these UN agencies and a lot of these scientists in the climate panel, they are sort of holding back on some of the most scary feedback mechanisms that are coming to fruition now. And from my own studies of the decadal averages, if you take 10-year averages for sea ice volume in the Arctic, it's very obvious to see that it's like a stone that is, you throw a stone and you can see the path down towards the ground, and it's going down all the way since like 92, 93. The 10-year average for the ice volume has just been going down every day. And I think it's very strange that you have to have this strange old guy up in Greenland playing with his computer to find that kind of clear sign of a tipping point many decades in the past. Why is nobody in the United Nations system doing that? Why don't we? Why does everybody who speaks about climate on television say that it's just a matter of choosing the right politician and then we can fix it and we can it's all in our hands? And I actually got a tip from one of my Facebook friends this morning. It was a new video from Yale Climate Connections. Yale, the university in America.
Not closely.
And it was a terrible propagandistic video, almost denialistic about methane. They used maybe an actor, I don't know, an actress, somebody who was worried about the methane bomb, and then you had lots of sort of doctors or experts who said, "Oh no, this is not dangerous, and it can't happen. Methane cannot be released because it's an endothermic reaction." That kind of abuse of science or abuse of scientific language. It's like when ocean water freezes into sea ice. That's an exothermic, the opposite of the reaction she was talking about. But following her logic, because when water freezes, it releases heat to the surroundings. So following her logic, the ocean could never freeze because it would be too hot from the exothermic reaction.
So it was these YouTube videos on this methane bomb theory, right? That there was this mechanism where these methane hydrates will escape from like subsea permafrost or from shallow, the ESS ice shelf, and create this runaway global warming effect. Now I know that all of these claims are overblown. Like, it's the methane bomb claims specifically. Like, obviously there's permafrost feedback, but in terms of like research that Carolyn Ruppel did.
I'm Carolyn Ruppel, and I work for the U.S. Geological Survey. I'm a marine geophysicist, and I lead the USGS Gas Hydrates Project. People who may not be too aware of the thermodynamics of gas hydrates may believe that once you start triggering warming of those and breakdown of those deposits, you can't stop it. And in fact, the thermodynamics helps you a lot on this because of the nature of the reaction. It's an endothermic heat reaction. This is a problem when we try to produce methane from hydrates. It keeps shutting itself down, right? So it's not a situation where we trigger breakdown and that breakdown is going to suddenly, like the whole deposit's going to release its methane all of a sudden. That is not a scientifically sound worry.
So it's like, you and I know that these Russian scientists, Shakova, or what's her name is?
And Semilitov.
Yeah, they've found that in the Arctic Ocean seabed in East Siberia, I think it's like a foot of thawing down into the seabed every year. So you thaw, because the ocean is warming up, you thaw another foot for every year, and even that's exponential. So that's also going further and further down.
Yes, and that's exponential. And they in an interview, I can't remember the name of Shakova. What's the first name?
Natalia
Shakova.
Yeah.
Said that there is a kind of frozen layer on the sea ground of the Siberian Arctic shelf, and this layer hinders the methane from the sediments to come out of the ground. And this layer is now thawing because the water the water isn't very deep, around 50 meters or so, and it's the water temperature is growing very fast, and it's thawing, and there's methane bubbling out of the sea ground and the sediments. And she said there's no possibility to freeze it, only if it's exposed to the air, and the atmospheric temperature is very, very low. It can be frozen again.
So it's not going to happen because we still have a lot of seawater, and we cannot send the water out to the moon or anything. So.
Yes, these layers and these methane in the sediments has been frozen in a very cold range of time. I don't know when it was, and afterwards this Arctic Ocean expands over this old sea ground, and so it's impossible to refreeze it.
Absolutely.
If we would be able as a humanity or not, there's no chance to freeze it.
No, it isn't.
And this is only one little example of a feedback mechanism. The water is heating, and this layer is thawing, and more methane is coming out, and so on, and that's irreversible.
Yeah.
And this example is very. If you hear from somebody like Natalia Shakova, it's absolutely logical and clear.
Yeah, it is, and I think we have already seen examples of Shakova and Semiletov being shut out from, for instance, the Royal Society of Science in England. So this Yale climate connection video I talked about, they said that no, it was not kept under wraps. People, the politicians and scientists are not trying to hide these very dangerous mechanisms, but I can see, I can recognize what it looks like when some scientists have a very sound and very scientific report, and they are still shut out of the good society, or what I'm talking about. And you can just look at the IPCC itself, the climate panel. They have a modus operandi of leaving out big dangerous mechanisms, like in their fourth report, I think. How many reports do they have? 5 or 4? Well,
I don't know exactly. I think the 5th has come out.
Yeah, in the 2007 report, anyway, they were trying to figure out how much sea level rise we would have by 2100, and then they left out Greenland, and they left out Antarctica. And the reason they left out the only big sources of frozen water was that it's difficult to know exactly how much will melt how soon, right? Mm-hmm. And then they just set the number 0 for Greenland and 0 for Antarctica. And they've done this with methane as well in 2014. Just saying that subsea methane will release only on millennial timescales or whatever.
Yes.
So they leave out these big things all the time, and I don't think Yale University is justified in saying that these things are not hidden from us, because I think they are.
Where do you get your data for the curves of the Arctic ice volume and so on?
Yeah,
what's your main source?
I use the most agreed upon source, which is the University of Washington, Washington State in America. The Pyomas ice volume series, and I used to get it from there, but because of the shutdown in America, there hasn't been any new numbers since November 2018. So it's very exciting to see if we will ever get sea ice volume numbers back up. It seems everything is shut down.
I've seen this curve, or I don't know if we can call it curve. It's just you wrote in your blog it's falling like a ball in the ballistic curve.
Yeah. So
why do you use 10 year average?
It's a good question. I have tried to explain it in different ways, but you can start with having only one day, looking at only one day of volume, and then you will go up and down, more or less randomly. Even in winter, the ice can go down a day, like a freak, like an exception, and you can have weekly averages and monthly, yearly, etc. So in order to find the sort of the real scale for looking at the sea ice, I've experimented with 1 year, which I used for a long time, and I made some graphs for 2-year average, 3-year average, 4-year average, and the interesting thing is that all of these long averages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year averages, they go sometimes up and down, even though the big trend is down. So, but when you come up to 9 and 10 years, it's always down from the start of the series in 1979. Then the 9-year averages and 10-year averages go only down. Which I think is kind of a more accurate picture of the Arctic, because it's like when it's spring in Germany, let's say March, April, May, everybody knows that in general it gets warmer every day, right? But sometimes you have some fog or some wind from the Arctic or whatever, and you can have 5 days where it gets colder and colder, even in April, May, right? But if you were to explain April, the concept of April, to your child, for instance, you wouldn't say that now it gets colder and colder in April every day. So that then you already use a sort of average, because you are older than your child, obviously. So then you can say that, no, but you do get warmer and warmer and closer to summer, even though it doesn't look like that right today. So I'm kind of doing the same thing in simplifying what we are seeing. Then I choose the 10-year, and because a 10 is a round number, and it's not cherry picking like making the 7-year or the 9-year. That's sort of more like cherry picking because it's that specific graph looks, you feel that I might feel that I could use that, but I use 10-year because then you take away the year-to-year ups and downs, which are natural in the system,
And it's going down since, I think, 30 years or so.
25 years and a couple of months.
What? 25, yes.
Yeah.
It's always going down, and I think that there must be a strong connection between CO2 and the trend of the Arctic ice volume.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Absolutely, but I think also I also think that these are self-reinforcing feedbacks. That my impression is that we triggered this runaway ice melt in the 70s or 80s. Then it was already too much carbon in the atmosphere. So we triggered these mechanisms, and methane was coming up already, back then too. But it's just much faster today, and you also have these lags. It's like, some people like to blame Donald Trump for the climate change we are seeing today, but it's more like Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton's carbon dioxide emissions that we are seeing causing all these wildfires in America, because there is these decades long lags from emissions and to the warming effect of them, right? So
yes.
So I actually believe that we are now past repair, beyond repair. Fubar fucked up beyond all repair.
Yes, and the last years the methane is coming out more and more, and so we have this melting curves quite taller to come down, steeper.
Yeah. And I think what this Yale climate connection, this USGS service scientist, what she left out when she was talking about the endothermic reaction of oxidizing or burning methane hydrates to methane gas. What she left out there was obviously that it is self-reinforcing, because she left out the fact that when you get this methane into the Arctic atmosphere, it will heat more and faster, and then more methane from the seabed will get released. So she didn't talk about that, almost like the climate panel didn't feel like talking about the Greenland ice or the Antarctic ice. So yeah. I analyzed the latest IPCC report as some kind of panic mode, entering a panic mode, where they try to sell a story, or sell a narrative to the public. I think they were going on about we have 12 more years,
Yes, and this report that we can read is the comparison for politicians, I think.
Yeah.
You've read, or did you have the original text?
Yeah, I don't know the original.
Don't think we won't get it. And for the politicians, nobody can say we have passed the point of no return, and we can slow it down, maybe not.
Yeah, no, it seems very unanimous, the tendency to say that it's all up to us what we do now. I think even James Hansen is quoted as saying that, and another guy in this Yale video said that it's almost entirely up to us, which is, if you say that the fate of the climate change is almost entirely up to us, that means that you are saying that there are no runaway feedback mechanisms. There are no lags of carbon already in the atmosphere that haven't played out yet. So the public life or the political sphere seems to be moving away from science, almost like in a new dark age. So, is there something in Macbeth that resembles this this moving away from enlightenment?
I don't know really. I think the tragedy is all the same, and we are humans. Said Shakespeare, I think 400 or 500 years ago, and all the Greece tragedies had the same plot, that greed and I don't know what. I don't have the English words for that. That we are human beings leads us to tragedies always, and I think this
hubris.
They brought it to the theater and showed it to have a kind of knowledge what's going on. I think that's it's what we are doing. We are looking what's going on and reporting about that, but we can't change it. That the population is growing in an exponential way, and the use of fossil fuel is still growing in an exponential way. The way people like to live, for example, in China or India or even Africa, they like to live as like we in the industrial civilizations, and I don't think there's any way to stop it or to slow it down, and we to see this, to be aware of this tragedy. Maybe we have a possibility to. There's another side of human beings. I think that's let's call it love, or let's call it cooperative. Cooperative. I can't find the English word.
No, but I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yes, and the scientists who are trying to find out how the brain is working, more and more say it's the brain is built for cooperation between people and so on. And so maybe our little job is to bring this out, this side of human mentality, and not to hit each other on the head in these last years and last phase of the human experience here on the planet.
Absolutely. And you told me that you started studying psychology, right? Before IT?
Yes, I've studied that, yes.
That must be very useful these days, I think. I've studied, both IT and literature and library sciences. And during my student years, I found a book about the Gothic element of literature, like goth novels and goth music and goth films and stuff. And that's quite interesting because the specifically gothic element in these narratives in like, let's say, Twin Peaks TV series and different novels is sort of looking at the fallible side of humans, our weaknesses and our hidden, bad traits and everything. And it's kind of where we are now as a humanity, because we can see all these fantastic politicians of all colors and ages and sexes standing on the chair, talking beautiful words about drawing down carbon and everything. And as you say, the concentrations of carbon in the atmosphere are only going up, and it's almost faster and faster as well. So we can see a humanity that is much less smart and intelligent than you and I learned when we went to school, because we are like, it's like we are only seeing our good side, our put makeup on our face side. We're not willing to recognize our bad sides as individuals and as societies, and so, but a non-living thing like the planet or the atmosphere, it doesn't care about what side of us we want to present. It only cares about how much carbon comes up from our house, if you get what I mean.
Yes, that reminds me of kind of training of Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
That's called feeding the demon.
Yeah.
And first, if you do this, you have a kind of projection. I would call it as a psychologist. There's a demon. There's a very bad problem, or even a bad guy, or a really big problem with this with climate change or disruption and so on. And I take this and I try to give this problem or feeling or bad side a face, like a demon. I imagine a demon in front of me.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, you invite this demon to come and to look, and then you are going to talk with this demon, huh? And ask him, what do you want to have, and what do you need beneath this, what you need, and what is the core of this, what you need, the demon. And then you're going to imagine that your body brings out this, what the demon needs, and you feed him with your, for example, melting body, and it's melting in a kind of color or rainbow colors or a fluid, and this is going to the demon and feeds the demon, and first most of you see the demon is growing and growing and growing and growing, and it's changing. If you do it, imagine this to feed the demon with your own body.
Yeah.
And you dissolve in this imaginary feed and the demon, and then you ask, is it enough? And are you fine? Are you did you get what you want? And if no, you go on feeding the demon.
Yeah.
And I've done it several times, and it's good to do it with two people. One is
okay.
unlighting. I don't know the word now. And you always see that this. I think it's this mechanism. Do you try to accept this demon, this bad side and this dark side, and you surrender to fight against it, and you do the opposite. You give all your love and your body and what you have and your energy to this, and it's the last step in this kind of training is that you're melting or dissolving and come together with this. Most of the time, the demon is gone away itself, and then there comes out, or you call and invite it, another creature.
Yeah.
And it's almost a very sometimes it's funny. Once there came from Star Wars. How's this very old green man? I can't remember the name. Came out, and then you can talk a little what this wise and good person or creature has to say you to support you, no? And
it's very interesting because I can totally relate to what you're saying, because when I lived in Norway and in our cabin in the mountain, I would sit outside in my deck chair in the middle of the night and just stare right into the darkness. Literally the darkness. It's just pitch dark. And without knowing about these Tibetan traditions that you talked about, I also ventured into the darkness of these things that we are talking about, the climate collapse and these things. And I think I have maybe 1 or 2 decades of, let's say, mental training in being able to face even the darkest things, and to not make them this huge troll that you cannot see or touch or think about, but rather go straight through it, like in Ibsen's place, you have this Bøygen, this big troll in the forest that says, go outside of me, go outside of me. But you can actually go straight for it and through the darkness, and if you can manage, I don't think every person can manage this, but if you can manage to look it straight in the eye and see how bad or not bad it really is, then you will be enlightened, I think, and you will also be able to see more clearly, the dimensions of it and how fast it is approaching. And it's ultimately it's more relaxing, I think, than being a normal Green Party person today, who has to keep long lists of which people and which topics not to think about, not to talk to, because I try to stay on this narrow path of being green but not that green, or consumeristic but not that consumeristic. It's like they seem to be on a very, very narrow path, and I think every person that I know who are let's say a climate activist or an online activist or a green, some kind of green person, they have the same story to tell about the Green Party in their own country. How they are almost abrupt climate change deniers. the only Green Party in Germany and Norway and New Zealand, etc. They are denying the very fast approach of climate catastrophe.
They are very popular now in Germany. And I think what you said to face this dark side or the darkness and to go into it, I think that's the best way to deal with fear.
Absolutely.
And angst or anxiety, because the worst thing to deal with fear is to avoid fear.
Yeah.
Then it's growing.
Yeah.
It's the best way to grow fear is to avoid it.
Yeah.
And I think that's everywhere we can see what's the effect of fear and the avoided fear that's not in the consciousness. I think it's you need to consume very much to not to have any little break, so that the fear or any feeling may come up and you feel it.
Yeah. Maybe we're coming towards the end of this, perhaps, and
Okay.
maybe it's appropriate to talk about one of your countrymen, Arthur Schopenhauer. You know him, the philosopher?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think he was. It's a long time since I read him, but I think he was the guy who said that a good way to deal with, let's say, what could you call it? To deal with tragedy and war and fear and all these things, maybe to do some form of art, play music, paint pictures, some creative art, or write fiction, which I am doing, and because even though Schopenhauer lived in the 1700s, I think, the world was fucked up even then, and he needed to have a distance between himself and reality, and he used art, or he recommended using art as that sort of insulation between yourself and the world as it is. I think it's a setup that works pretty good for me, because as long as I'm writing a fictional story, a novel about climate issues and the future, if there is such a thing, then that is my focus, is to do that in a creative and good way. And like Guy McPherson says, there's nothing we can do to actually save or solve this situation, so it's almost better to then venture into something you really love to do anyway, like nature hiking or playing your instrument or something.
What I'm doing, it's working better than meditating for me, is African drumming.
Yeah.
With djembe, I've joined a group years ago, and my experience is you come out of your head.
Yeah.
If you are drumming and there are really complicated patterns you have to play, And if you think, now, was it the right or the left hand I have to use, you come out and it's not working. And so you have to, like you said, you have gone through and in the dark. I'm going into drumming patterns.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, you have to sort of leave your head and just do the.
Yes.
Yeah.
And be in the present.
Yeah.
In this moment now, and in the flow, and in the drumming, you feel it very easily when you are in the flow or not.
Yeah.
If it's working or not.
I just remembered, Mal, apropos, you said something in our email about an essay by Malcolm Light. Did you want to touch that before we close down this chat?
No, I want just the listener may read what I've written about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think that's better.
Yeah, I can just link it from the show notes from the video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think I've already seen other reactions to his essay. So maybe I can just I can link your essay, and then I can link Sam Mitchell or whoever it was, and then maybe if we come back and have another talk in a month or two, then we can go deeper into that kind of thing.
Yes, I would enjoy talking to you. Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, and I hope you will keep your snow in Münster for a little while more.
For some days.
Yeah,
the dog loves it.
And your kids, are they skiing or building snowman or something?
Oh, in Münster it's all flat and there's no way to skiing.
Okay. Yeah.
And they are 16 since Monday.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's more like iPad and computer games, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. See you back maybe, February, March, perhaps?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye to Greenland.
Wiedersehen.
Wiedersehen.